It was a creed written into the founding documents that declared the destiny of a nation. Yes, we can. It was whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail toward freedom. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
It was sung
by immigrants.
From WBRN Radio in Boston on the Bostonred Network, the title of our episode, The Mickey Mouse Shutdown, on the 23rd of January 2018. The government of the United States is back in business after a 3-day shutdown officially. The shutdown was the end of a debacle, no doubt about it, by the Democratic leadership in the Senate. It was an unfortunate situation, but it happens there. You'll hear from Professor Rush of Berkeley and his resistance report, where he'll talk about framing. And we'll just say a little bit about framing an issue. When you frame an issue, in such a way to bring in as many people to your particular point of view as is possible given the situation. Now, when you frame a shutdown based upon an immigration issue at best is a 50-50 issue. At worst, it's a 60-40 issue. It is usually something that is not easily, or I should say that individuals can get their head around, because the immigration in itself, there are so many caveats to it. The B1H visa program and various other programs. There are many, many programs, special programs for refugee populations, such as we had at one time with the Cubans, and then we had an exemption for Haitians, etc. There are just many of these. And also the, as Professor Rush points out, the 1965 Immigration Act, one of the purposes was to keep families together. Now, what the Republicans have done, they have changed keeping families together to chained immigration. So in other words, an immigrant arrives on the coast, so to speak, and at some point in time, the family members are eligible to be brought to the U.S. based upon that citizenship, is how it all boils down to. But by framing it the way the Republicans have framed it, it is a reference point for the particular constituency that they represent. Now, during this particular shutdown, there was a situation, and what most people don't comprehend here, that within the Senate, the leadership under old man McConnell, a wise old owl, been around a long time, and understood that if he hung in there, and just by the simple word moving the term from dreamers to quote-unquote illegal aliens, remember the word illegal, then DJ Trump puts out a commercial talking about some criminal type that happened to be an immigrant. But what that did was solidified his particular base. Now, on the Democratic Party, the base was immigration activists. Not the largest base within the Democratic Party. So this is one of the problems to begin with. But had the Dreamers been framed as not as a business, and that's pretty much what the Chamber of Commerce, business groups are the one pushing so-called immigration reform because they want workers. It's not about the workers. It's not a humanitarian effort at all, period. Now, you would say, well, in some instances, yes, in some instances, people that come because of their lives are threatened, etc., political asylum, that is a little different situation, and there are laws that cover that. But the whole framework much misunderstood. Now, had they based this upon, as Mike Lee and the senator from, let's see, which one is this? The senator from Kentucky there, Rand Paul, on the idea of getting a debt bill in its finality. In other words, getting a long-term bill. That is much easier for people to digest, because most people do not like short-term, patchy-type things. And this is sort of from the Washington Post winners and losers here, and the congressional Republicans who more or less, well, they didn't hold together there. Four voted against it, which in itself is a very significant bunch there. The stop-and-start nature of short-term spending bills, the lack of firmness on a voting deal to protect the Dreamers from deportation. Now, the number one issue here was the short-term spending bills. Now we have another short-term spending bill till the 8th of February. 28 senators who caucus with the Democrats changed their vote. Now, this just tells you what happened there. And there are people that fought back against it. Kamala Harris, she's running for president, some say. Majority Leader comments fell short of an ironclad guarantee. True. I needed to support a stopgap bill. I refuse to put the lives of 700,000 young people in the hands of someone who has repeatedly gone back on his word. And they also list DJ Trump as a possible winner there. But he's also a loser. His indecisiveness here was shown. And what the White House did was effectively hid DJ Trump away for the last few days. He had nothing to do with it. His impulse was to make a deal with Schumer of New York. But the deal did not come forward, and now stuck with another one of these stopgap bills. Now, it's interesting here, Graham evidently voted for it, and so did Jeff Flake, which had no reason to vote in the first place. He's retiring. And they list clearly the losers here in their summation. Basically, see everything on why the Republicans won. The Democrats calculated their base and the American voters would reward them for taking such a high-profile stand to protect the Dreamers. Well, that in itself was a Disneyland wish, and the Republicans would blink first. Well, the Republicans were blinking. There was no doubt about that. They were scared of this shutdown, but it didn't extend long enough. In shutdowns, you don't really get leverage until after about a week and a half. Then there's some leverage. It didn't have it there. In the end, they gave a significant negotiating grounds on the wall. They were going to give Trump his whole wall, literally. Told the president to name his price. Well, DJ Trump would have got his wall, and the 700,000 Dreamers would have got a process, and that's all that amounted to. Now, as far as the Dreamers there, no ironclad agreement there that will pass, let alone that the more conservatives in the House will even take it up. That's true. They may not take it up. On other spending deals, the whole drama was keeping the government open for a few weeks. This is the fourth short-term spending bill that has passed Congress since the fiscal year started in October. So it's down to the 8th. There are still major disagreements between the sides. How much to raise the budget cap on defense and non-defense defense spending. How much to spend on disaster aid. So all of these things are still out here, and they are not literally going away. This This whole orchestrated scheme here is all it is a scheme in itself. So a big question asked here by the Post. The Senate will take up immigration, but will the House, and will with DJ Trump? Well, who knows? DJ Trump could say, forget it. So it's a situation here. They point out right away in the House, the Gang of Eight, the idea is not going to pass in the House. Rafael Labrador, he's from Idaho, co-authored a conservative bill, but offered legal status to some dreamers along with a host of other policies. So in other words, there is no clear-cut situation. There's going to be an awful lot of pressure. Claire McCaskill, one of roughly 30 senators who worked to break the impasse, is going to start with members of the military. They're going to are they going to deport them? Are they going to start with teachers? Are they going to start with college students? Those in med school? At a certain point, the American people want these young people to protect. But that's the business end of it, basically, of the bill. They will come up with something there they want. That's just, it's that simple. Ryan says he'll bring the bill up. Well, maybe he will, maybe he won't. Now, the Graham plan and the Grant Durbin plan, I guess, would offer legal status, eventual path to citizenship for the Dreamers. In exchange, well, we don't have to worry about the border stuff here. Now, this, what is it, Martha McSally and Labrador would reduce the number of authorized legal immigrants by 25% to 260,000 a year. And 10,000 Border Patrol. We won't even go into this. This is flummery, but from Florida, and this is from the Public News Service, we'll bring this in. Democrats cave to government shutdown, at least how immigrant groups see it. The Florida Immigration Coalition was hoping to see nothing less than a long-term plan to protect children who were brought to the U.S. illegally, but the coalition's Melissa Taveras said it feels like the Democrats are walking away with nothing more than another empty promise, no doubt about that. We are really disappointed that the Democrats pretty much caved in, as she lamented. We really were hoping for a clean DREAM Act to pass. By the end of a bipartisan group of senators hashed out a deal. Democrats would vote for a continuing resolution, if the Senate leader McConnell would promise to hold a vote. Well, he can hold a vote, but what if they lose the vote? Travadas said that she's also disappointed to see the lives of immigrant youth being used as bargaining chips. Well, no doubt about this, but it's not really the bargaining chip that you'd think. The fact that every day we have DACA beneficiaries that are losing their status, it creates essentially a domino effect for them. If they don't have access to documents, they can't make it to school or they can't make it to work. The bill that funds the government through the AIF also extends the children's health care program for 6 years. Now, the Democrats would taunt that as their victory and delays of 3 Obamacare attacks as well. That's no big deal. In Florida, Marco Vegas Rubio and Bill Nelson both supported a DACA bill, although Vegas Rubio said the deal would include funding to build a wall. Well, they're going to put funding in this worthless wall. There's no doubt about that. That's one of the things that he pops up there. Now, there's a new group we found, and I noticed Professor Rush had them up there, called Invisible. It's time to move past ideology to reality. Government is our tool. When we wedge it properly, can help the American people grow our economy, strengthen our nation, we cannot simply dismiss the use of government to help solve problems. Well, no doubt about that. The government is us. Well, most people would agree on that. But the problem I see here also is we have our revolution, and there is President Obama's group out there. There are plenty of groups out there, but we need to solidify these groups on the one common umbrella. What we don't need is a lot of fragmentation out here, because that in itself is a problem, and this is something we have to address. Let me just add a couple of things here. We had, remember Rollins Edwards. He was a survivor of World War II and a secret mustard gas experiment. There he recently passed away. He was a civil rights pioneer, in Dorchester County, and a World War II veteran who was subject to a classified Army chemical weapons test and forced to keep quiet about the experience for decades. He died at 95 in Somerville, Friday, according to his obituary. He was born March the 5th, 1922. Long after his service in World War II, he launched a historic political career, serving as the first African-American elected to Dorchester County Council in the 70s and the Somerville Town Council. During the war in 1944, he and other minority soldiers were subjected to a secret camp deep in the backwoods of Louisiana, where they were repeatedly exposed to deadly chemical agents, including mustard gas. And Lucid, I'm not sure what that one is, but he described the sensation as a million fire ants on you and stinging at the same time in an interview with the Post and Courier. Testing continued for about 30 days. When the trial ended, Edwards was told to never speak about what happened, or he would face 40 years imprisonment. He rejoined his unit and was sent to oversee with the Army's 1329th Engineers Corps, seeing duty in Europe and in the Pacific. Although the testing was over, the impact lasted a lifetime. He received megadoses of penicillin, but left him unable to have children, and whatever worked to smooth the burning treatment from the lesions that erupted in his body. Body sores would open up all over, and his skin would begin to crack and flake off, leaving behind pinkish blotches. After the war, he returned to the U.S., became a musician, traveled, got married, and evidently opened a dry cleaning business in Somerville. Politics followed. He kept secret about the testing until 1993, when the Department of Veteran Affairs opened a search for as many as 4,000 veterans exposed to mustard gas during the classified tests. It's widely accepted the military primarily targeted African-American GIs along with Puerto Ricans and Japanese Americans. So there were minorities there. Japanese Americans. Rollins continued to address the federal government about recognizing the servicemen who were forced to submit to chemical exposure. In June of this year, Michael Owens, an adjunct professor of English at the College of Charleston, published a book about Edwards' burned a conversation with a black World War II veteran. And this is out of the Post and Courier in Charleston, South Carolina. We posted this on Facebook, and we're appreciative of an individual that posted, I believe it was Nancy Lockhart that posted this originally there, and so we now have it. All right. This will do it for us. Again, the Mickey Mouse Shutdown. I guess if we subtitle this, it would be a matter of framing. The issue was badly framed from a PR standpoint and from a political standpoint. So what has happened here is an immigration issue, and immigration in this country has always been a dicey matter. It's never been a very popular matter, period. And what DJ Trump and company have done is they have got their base in an anti-immigrant, if you come with America First, and a look back to an apartheid era in the 50s, you're talking about white supremacy. And when you talk about white supremacy, you have problems with immigration. And this is part of it, as Professor Raj says, the 1965 Act. We were primarily talking about Europeans. Asians were drastically limited. Very few Africans from the diaspora were coming to the States, and very few people from what they call euphemistically South Asia, India, etc. But that has all changed. And that is the reason they have attacked the family unity part of the 65 Act, to limit people of color access into the country. Now, that was the issue right there. But by framing it as they did and not framing it as just a debt bill that had to be taken care of in the long term, a long-term debt bill, as Lee and Paul framed it, that they would have been able, at least from our opinion, to sustain it for a week and a half, 2-week period, and had a political impact. We didn't get that. So we will go on now to Professor Reich and his resistance report. He gave it on Tuesday, the 22nd. Good day from WBRN Radio in Boston and the Bostonred Network. We'll talk to you soon.
Government shutdown, or what was behind it, and today's agreement to keep it funded for it's the resistance report for January 22nd, 2018, where we give you the big picture. Tonight, what's really behind the government shutdown, or what was behind it, and today's agreement to keep it funded for 17 more days, where we're likely to go in the future, and Trump and the Republicans' larger game. The federal government is open again, at least for another 17 days, but the funding doesn't include legislation to protect young undocumented immigrants, known as dreamers, from deportation, nor any specific guarantee of a vote on such protection. Mitch McConnell merely said that he intended to have such a vote. Well, intentions, and McConnell's intentions in particular, are not worth very much. I mean, he said he intended to have a vote along with border security. I doubt the Democrats can trust McConnell, who during November's tax debates won the votes of wavering Republicans by promising extra funding for Medicaid and a speedy vote on immigration. You think he has delivered on either of these? No. You trust McConnell like you trust a lizard, right? Now, Trump has been president for a year. Tens of thousands marched this weekend against him. 2/3 of the nation disapproves of Trump. Well, what does that mean? How does he keep his power? Why do Republican members of Congress stick by him? Because Trump stokes bigotry, racism, and xenophobia and electrifies the base. Yesterday, for example, Trump tweeted, "The Dems just want illegal immigrants to pour into our nation unchecked." And also yesterday, the executive director of Trump's campaign, a fellow named Michael Glasner. Have you heard of Michael Glasner? I hadn't heard of Michael Glasner, but he's the executive director of the Trump campaign. He lauded Trump for keeping Americans safe from what he called evil, illegal immigrants who commit violent crimes against lawful U.S. citizens. This is called fear-mongering, friends. On Saturday, Trump's re-election campaign aired an ad claiming Democrats who oppose Trump's demand for a border wall will be complicit in every murder committed by illegal immigrants. Now, I want you to have a look at this ad.
The only thing that people dead is the steal too.
That's illegal immigrant Luis Bracamontes, charged with murdering 2 police officers.
I wish I killed one of those motherfuckers.
It's pure evil. President Trump is right. Build the wall. Deport criminals. Stop illegal immigration now. Democrats who stand in our way will be complicit in every murder committed by illegal immigrants. President Trump will fix our border and keep our families safe.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Yesterday, some Republicans, including those working for Trump in the White House, tried to distance themselves from this incendiary ad. Here's Mark Short, the Trump White House's Director of Legislative Affairs, talking to NBC's Chuck Todd.
You know that ad is produced by an outside group and not those of us in the White House.
Donald J. Trump for president is an outside group?
Let me talk about...
Wait. Donald J. Trump for president is an outside group?
Hello? Unbelievable. Let's take another look at the last few seconds of that ad.
Keep our families safe.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
The ad was produced by Donald J. Trump. Those are the words, for president. Donald J. Trump for president. The ad concludes with Trump saying, I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. And then there's a photo of Trump with his 2 thumbs up. This ad, the entire Trump campaign for president, comes out of the White House. That's where it is, its locus is. Steve Bannon may be gone from the White House, but policy advisor Stephen Miller, you remember Stephen Miller? Miller continues to be the source of that xenophobic, racist rant, that strategy. Now, never before has a sitting president launched such a racist attack. Airing such a heinous ad to win a battle in Congress is something completely new. Frankly, it is revolting. I mean, presidents used to assume that their job was to bring America together, didn't they? Don't you remember presidents, even presidents you may not have liked before? They at least understood at some level of their cerebral cortex that they were supposed to be a uniting force in America. This man is putting out ads and saying things designed to sow division, chaos. Donald Trump lives off of conflict. He always has lived off of conflict. He's going to have a State of the Union January 30th, a State of the Union by Donald Trump. He is creating disunion more than any other president in living memory, perhaps ever. Yesterday, Senator Lindsey Graham renewed his criticism of White House aides' handling of immigration. He singled out Miller. As long as Stephen Miller is in charge of negotiating immigration, we're going nowhere, Graham told reporters. Well, Graham might have also added that Miller is part of Trump's brain. Trump's divisive brain. And let's be clear, it's not just the Dreamers. Trump and the Republicans are also demanding an end to what they call chain migration. Chain migration. It's what we used to call family reunification. Chain migration, family reunification, it's the way our entire immigration system has been organized for more than a half century. It allows legal citizens to sponsor family members coming here from abroad. That was the 1965 Immigration Act. Now, let me ask you something. Do you really think Trump and the GOP would be against what they call chain migration, family reunification? I love this word, chain migration. I mean, it sounds horrible, doesn't it? Would they be against chain migration, family reunification, if most family members being reunited with their American relatives were white Western Europeans? Of course not. They're against it because so many family members from abroad are black or brown. They are coming from places Trump calls shitholes, pardon the expression. Instead, Trump and the Republicans want a system based on what they call merit. Now, what do they mean by merit? What does merit actually mean? You know, bring me you're poor, you're tired, you're struggling, humble masses yearning to be breathed free. No, merit. Presumably, they mean white people coming from places like Norway. As if Norwegians wanted to come here to the United States. The Trump administration has also fired up fear-mongering at the Department of Justice, used the Justice Department as a place to actually fuel more fear. Last week, the department released a report entitled Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorist Entry into the United States. This report, by the way, was mandated by Trump's March 6th executive order that reestablished a travel ban targeting 6 Muslim-majority countries. The press release for this report said, an analysis conducted by DHS, Department of Homeland Security, concluded that 73%, this is what the Justice Department says, an analysis by DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security, concludes that 73% of terrorists were foreign-born. And according to Attorney General Jeff Sessions in his own press release, this report reveals an indisputable, sobering reality. Our immigration system has undermined our national security and public safety after the House passed the tax bill. I mean, talk about bribery. But Trump, Ryan, and other Republican leaders are hiding their work for America's oligarchies and the Kochs and the CEOs of big companies and Wall Street. They're hiding it by using bigotry to convince Trump supporters he's actually one of them. I mean, for example, this campaign against immigrants. What do you think it's about? It's a front. Or all of this business right now, letting health workers opt out of providing health care for women who want abortions, or bakers opt out of baking wedding cakes for gay couples, or states decide Medicaid recipients who are disproportionately black or brown must work, even though no one has ever decided not to work because they have Medicaid. Medicaid helps people get to work. You see the pattern here? It's an economic policy designed for oligarchs and a social policy based on fear, designed to keep Trump and Republicans in power. But you know something? It's not going to work, because the vast majority of us are neither oligarchs nor are we bigots. And we can see through this. We can see the indecency of this, the cynicism of this. And like we just saw over the weekend with the women's marches across the country, we are not going to accept this. Please, commit yourself to containing this utter calamity by flipping Congress next November 6th, and then removing Trump from office, legally, nonviolently, but doing it no later than 2020, hopefully before then. And then setting the nation on a course of widening democracy, shared prosperity. Don't close your ears or eyes to what is happening. Try to stay positive. Embrace your loved ones. Spread the truth. And now for your questions. John Lewis Smith, now that Democrats have caved on the shutdown, what leverage, if any, do they still have? Well, they still have the 60 vote leverage. I mean, Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump urged Mitch McConnell to get rid of all of that. But Mitch McConnell and the Senate, at least for the time being, still require 60 votes for major legislation, and the Republicans don't have 60. They've got 51, so they've got to rely on Democrats for that. But it is disappointing. Josh Potash, why do Democrats seem to be so much worse at political maneuvering and messaging than the Republicans? Josh, partly because the Republicans do have, a messenger in chief. I mean, Donald Trump is a marketer. He knows how to get attention. He knows how to say things that are going to not only sow conflict and chaos and division, but also make sure people hear them. I mean, he's this whole business of tweeting. Every time somebody, and I do it, but every time somebody repeats a tweet, that's another way of getting the message out. The Democrats don't have a messenger. And even if the Democrats had a messenger, they don't have a clear and concise message. I mean, being kind and decent and fair and good, that's fine. But the Democrats need a sharp message, and we can talk about that. I can't talk about it right now. We don't have time, but I have done some thinking about that. Melissa Carr, would new candidates who run as progressives be a better choice than a Democratic candidate? Wouldn't it be a challenge for a progressive to work with the two major parties? Melissa, I guess what you're suggesting here is that we have a progressive party. And I think that's a damn good idea, but I don't think the Progressive Party ought to run its own candidates separate from the Democratic Party, because that would just drain off votes from the Democratic Party. But we could have a Progressive Party that pushed the Democratic Party in the right direction, a Progressive Party that was like the Tea Party on the right, but was actually doing things that were in the interest of all Americans, rather than a small sliver of Americans. Finally, we've got Jane McEntee. Will any Republican take on Trump in the GOP primaries? Jane, I think Mitt Romney is going to take on Trump. I think Mitt Romney is going to win the Senate race in Utah, and then Mitt Romney is going to be the alternative, the anti-Trump in the Republican primaries. And I'm going to bet almost anything on that. It will be interesting to see how Mitt Romney does against Donald Trump. Romney is much smarter than Trump, but Trump is, in terms of marketing, in terms of just saying stuff that is simple and gets into, Trump is going to possibly get into Romney's skin, under his skin. It'd be an interesting thing to see. And when we get to the point of talking about candidates for the Democratic nomination, whether it's Joe Biden or it is Bernie Sanders again, or it is Oprah or anybody else, bear in mind that the real question is, who are they up against? If they're up against Mitt Romney, it's an entirely different conversation than if they are up against Donald Trump. Again, I want to thank Andrew Santana and Sasha Lightman, and I want to thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.